they're going to be the most interesting team for me to talk about in 2025. I mean, we talked about them a lot last summer too, and I think the tenor of the conversation with them is a little different in the sense of last year it was kind of like, look, I need to see it before I'm going to start buying it. Like every year it seems, oh, Penn State's going to take that next step forward. Penn State's going to take that next step forward. And they're a good team. And Flip's mentioned this to us numerous times that, James Franklin gets an unfair rap for not coaching up to his talent or whatever. And in fact, it's actually the opposite. Like they're consistently outperforming what their recruiting rankings is. If anything, the knock on James Franklin should be, why are you not consistently signing top 10 classes at a program like Penn State with the resources available to you? And I don't know that anything that happened in 2024 for Penn State was going to be enough to sway the haters' minds, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think reasonable people can sit and look and say, sure, Penn State probably got a little bit of a gift with their first two rounds playoff games last year, but they still won those games. They were a Drew Aller brain dead interception away from potentially winning the Orange Bowl and rematching Ohio State for a national title. They didn't exactly get their doors blown off by Ohio State in the regular season, as pitiful as the offense looked in that game at times. And they held tough with Oregon too. So like even though you're looking at like the overall of Penn State in 2024 is, they played for a Big Ten title, but they didn't win the Big Ten. They made a playoff run, but they didn't really beat a name brand program to get there. Like you can nitpick and detract, but full stop, that was a big step forward for James Franklin. Like getting back to the Big Ten title game, winning a couple of big, meaningful postseason games. That's how you build momentum into a season like this. The issue with that now is you've given the fan base a taste of what that success feels like, and you've continued to build up that momentum in the offseason with the Knowles hiring and in the announcement of all these players who've been coming back. So now you've set 2025 up as kind of this high watermark for your program. Like expectations are high. And I don't know that this has been a position or a tier or a stratosphere that Penn State has occupied in the James Franklin era. We're coming into a season, the expectations are as high as they are. There's certainly been expectations. I think going into last year it was playoff or bust, and well, mission accomplished with that. Now to build off of what you did last year, like you have to make the national title game or else it will have been a step back. And everything's contextual, right? But in Penn State's position, it's kind of like Michigan after they lost to TCU. You had a great year last year, but you brought everyone back. If it's not going to happen for you this year, when is it going to happen? And for Penn State, that's what it kind of feels like this year.
I mean, it's in a sense, it's natty or bust, right? It's the same thing that you felt like Michigan was in 23, and certainly the pressure. I mean, all of Ohio State's players said it last year, natty or bust. We all came back to win the national championship, and along the way get some other things that they didn't get. But simply going to the Big Ten championship game and winning and then losing in the first round of the playoff, a la Oregon, is not acceptable for this Penn State team this year. They have too much on the line. They brought too much back. There's so many expectations. So as you mentioned, this is kind of a new stratosphere for them. How do they handle that? Expectations are very high. James Franklin, find your way in a game in which you are talent equated to win, because you beat everybody below you. Now you got to beat somebody as good or better than you a little more consistently. And that game in Columbus looms pretty large, and I believe they host Oregon this year.
Yeah, that's can we talk about this gift of a schedule that they got?
Absolutely.
Their non-conference schedule is laughable. Like full-on non-competitive non-conference schedule. So you play 3 cupcakes, you have a bye before you get Oregon. Like that is an Ohio State 2024 schedule. That is literally the Ohio State 2024 schedule.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the damn Oregon game is a whiteout.
It won't be.
It's
not going to be. It's not going to be.
We don't even need to get our hopes up. Sorry, Penn State fans. We know Fox will win it.
So you get the Oregon game. Kind of tricky the next week having to go across the country to UCLA, but your 3 games after Oregon are UCLA, Northwestern, and Iowa before another bye before you go to Ohio State. So you have a bye week before your 2 biggest games of the season. What a gift from the Big Ten. I think the interesting thing about this Penn State schedule, you have Indiana on here. So on the surface, that appears to be a tough game, but we'll see what Indiana is in 2025. But you finish off at Michigan State, Nebraska, and at Rutgers. This isn't outside of those two marquee games and maybe Indiana, like there's not a lot of meat on this schedule bone here, Clinton.